Let's start with that game between Morocco and Spain, going all the way to penalties. Not many chances at all, goalless after 120 minutes of play. But in that penalty shootout, goalkeeper Bono, the hero with 2 saves. And what a story. It all came down to that deciding penalty. And it was the Madrid-born and raised Achraf Hakimi who sealed the deal with a Panenka penalty, no less. What a day it was. Let's welcome in a few more of our pundits to talk about it. We do have Julien Laurent alongside Shaka Hislop, now in Qatar for us. We have also got Luis Garcia. Luis, very sorry. We will get to you in just a moment. But let's start with you, Shaka. First of all, you're in the Shaka Hislop studio. What do you think of it?
It's fantastic. It's exceeded my every expectation, Kay. There was no expense spared. And rightly so, I'll hasten to add. I allowed Jules to come into the Shaka Hislop studio. That's how nice a guy I am. You're welcome, Julia.
Neymar's parties and VIP access to the Shaka Hislop studio.
Well, apparently Shaq is not happy. He normally takes expects a week to acclimate when he gets to a place like this. And we have him working. We have him working, Shaka, straight away, 24 hours after arrival.
Talk about rolling out the red carpet, though, for Shaka Hislop. No sooner had...
To that
Go
point,
on, Shaka.
Craig, sorry, I was just saying, I've been acclimating for quite some time, Craig. I started early.
I see. Did you see that the Shaka Hislop studio also includes a ladder? It's right there in the picture as well, just in case. Yeah, there was a ladder. It's all inclusive, you see.
It's the stairway to heaven. Shaka
Apparently
Hislop.
so.
Okay, Shaka Hislop. As he said, no expense spared. Listen, no sooner had he arrived in Qatar than he was given a ticket to the Morocco-Spain game. What was it like to be there, Shaka?
It was outstanding. It really was a great game to be at for a number of reasons. Didn't get any goals, but Morocco representing the Arab countries here in Qatar, and I have to say they did themselves proud. And there's a huge Moroccan contingent in terms of fans coming over from Morocco. There's a huge Moroccan population that live here in Qatar, and they all showed up. Right now, there are celebrations in town as everybody has hitched their wagon to Morocco.
Jules, you were there too. You, in fact, predicted that Morocco would advance ahead of this game. You were right.
Yeah, I've seen them play in the group stages. I covered the games, and I have to say, defensively, they had been the better side in this tournament. You knew exactly how they were going to play against Spain. They were very happy to leave the ball to Spain and then be very narrow to force Spain to play wide, which they did, and to no effect, really. And then it was a question of, could they take one of the chances on set pieces or counter-attack, or go all the way to the pens? And we know that Yassine Bounou is one of the best penalty stoppers. You know, he saved 2 penalties against Erling Haaland when Haaland was at Salzburg, for example. So not many keepers can do that. But what strikes me the most with this Moroccan team and the players that I know in there is just that team spirit and the belief that they are. And today was a historical day for them, because no Morocco side had ever qualified for the quarterfinal of the World Cup ever. 1986 was the closest they came, and they lost in the last few minutes against Germany, or against West Germany at the time, and a Lothar Matthäus free kick. And what was really interesting is, before the game today, Walid Regragui, Paris-born and bred, by the way, their coach, I had to say, Shaka, their coach showed the boys a little video of that game in 1986 and that defeat against Germany, to say to them, look, it was just a little mistake, really. All the details matter in those big games like that, and they made no mistake whatsoever today against the Spanish. They were almost perfect, and in the end, I think they fully deserved that win.
Meanwhile, Luis, what happened to your Spain?
Well, what can I say? We did a lot of passes. I know that Ali is going to be very happy about that. That's the way it is. We have the possession. We were dominant. And what can we say? I mean, I don't want to take any credit from this Morocco side. I think Spain did what they have to do. They tried to have the ball. They have to try to open on the wide area, try to create chances. But the Moroccan team didn't make any mistakes at the back. And to be honest, the midfield of Busquets, Gavi and Pedri, they were overrun by Amrabat and Unai. They were really, really impressive. And I was expecting maybe in the last minutes of the game they will be tired, but they continue being very, very disciplined at the back, very well organized, and Spain doesn't have that, but that's something that we knew from the very beginning of this tournament. We don't have the players up front that can make. We don't have the Mbappés, don't have the Dembélés, we don't have Neymar, so we don't have these kind of players that on their own they can break two players and score a goal. We need that working between all the players, that movement of the ball, that quick passes between the balls. But today, because there was no spaces at all, Busquets, I think they didn't even touch a ball for 20 minutes. Olmo, Ferran Torres, they couldn't pass their own defenders. They always facing another defender and another defender. Bono was outstanding in all the game, not only in the penalties. And at the end, well, this is the Spain that we knew that it could happen. I think it was a mirage what we saw in the first game against Costa Rica, a team that opened up against Spain, and then we could use that. But at the end, I think that Morocco, in the end, could do something today, and it was in the penalties. But I think that Spain need to continue what they continue doing because they are very young and feel very proud because I think it's been a good tournament for them.
Luis Enrique took full responsibility after this. Correct to do so?
Well, he picked the squad and the team, and it's not all players that are playing regular or playing well. But Morocco, just briefly, they haven't lost a goal to an opposing player. I mean, that's incredible. They've lost one goal, it was an own goal. Rock solid. I mean, rock solid. Denied the space to Busquets, let the centre-halves have it. Terrific performance. But Spain, I'm sick watching them, to be honest with you. I mean, I've no sympathy. I was sitting there, and as they were bashing their head continually on the wall, going, and eventually it happened, but it was ludicrous when Rodri shot from 40 yards. But I'm sitting screaming, for Christ's sake, somebody shoot from 25 yards, man. Play it around the corner to Morata or Asensio. Get a little 1-2 and get a strike at goal. No, let's go wide again. Let's try this. Let's go back out the other side. It's not working. You have to do something different. We've seen quite a few goals in this tournament from outside the box. We've also seen the odd one or two from 20 yards or so that have taken big deflections and the goalkeeper's been wrong-footed. But you have to buy a ticket for that raffle for it to work. And quite frankly, Spain just ran out of ideas. They're such a frustrating side to watch.
Is that the problem, Ali? They've only got one way of playing.
Well, yes, and it's an issue that we knew coming into the tournament and that we had pointed out time and time again. What I thought was really frustrating today from Spain's perspective, and yes, the passing side to side that just never stopped. It was endless. The positioning that guys like Gavi and in particular Pedri were taking, though, in the second half, Pedri was playing off of the left shoulder of Laporte. And in the first half, he was playing off of the right shoulder of Rodri, the two center backs. And his role was getting the possession, getting the ball from Laporte to then open up his body and find Jordi Alba over here on the left-hand side. Then that ball would then get played back to Pedri, open up his body, and find Laporte. There was never a pass going that way. And guess what? Who should be in the position to get that ball in between lines for Spain when they're attacking? Usually, a guy like Pedri. So when he gets his head up in the position that he had taken, there was nobody to play into. There was no vertical movement to play into. And to the point of changing the way that you play, at some point, how about a direct ball around the corner? How about a service that turns around Morocco, that forces to defend facing their own goal rather than always defending what's in front of them? It was never uncomfortable up until Nico Williams came on the field and actually took somebody on a 1v1 situation and generated a couple of crosses. But up until that point, it was just from A to B to C to D, and here we go back again this way and back again this way. They never, ever looked like scoring today, and certainly there was never vertical options. There was never vertical movement, and there was never a shot from distance.
His choice to... I mean, he's been through so much, Luis Enrique, on a personal level, that I think when he reflects on it, there's a big picture here to life and what his family have been through. But from a football perspective, this is a huge blow, obviously, for him and the players and the Spanish public. But ultimately, you look at his team selection. Unai Simon was always going to play because of the way he plays with his feet and the risks he takes. But let's peel it back. He played one of the best midfielders in Europe, in Rodri at centre half. Busquets looked mustard against Costa Rica. That was probably the end. you know, because then he started to filter away a little bit as more pressure got put on him. He took 2 right backs with him and ended up playing Marcus Llorente there. He played Jordi Alba when Baldi's been playing before him at Barcelona. The midfield 3 was the midfield 3, we can argue about Busquets. And then we have Asensio and Ferran Torres, who aren't really playing at the clubs. Now, this is what Enrique said. Trust me, this is the way I'm doing it. This is the way I have done it. It's not necessarily about the players that are playing well for Real Madrid or Barca or whoever it is, but the players that I can trust. So he's done it his way, and ultimately it has failed. There are players that are, I mean, he hasn't got the deepest squad, but Morata was the informed striker, whether you like him or not Asensio, playing decent for Atletico Madrid. He didn't bother taking Aspas. He didn't take Borja Iglesias. He didn't take Gerard Moreno, even though he's not fully fit. But those guys will maybe, particularly Gerard Moreno, it might bounce off his backside. He gets you a goal. He took a comfortable squad with him, and ultimately they failed.
And to the point of Borja Iglesias, this is the sort of game in which you could have used a guy like Borja Iglesias, a guy who can play in between center backs, and you can actually play the ball into the box, directly into the box, so that you have services. Quick service. How about an early cross? That never happens for Spain. That would have been available if you had a guy of the profile of Borja Iglesias. Now, I don't want to make this discussion about Borja Iglesias, but it's a larger point in terms of the lack of variety for Spain. Why is there lack of variety? Because you have lack of options. And who limited those options? Well, Luis Enrique and his choices, and now Spain is paying for it.
Luis, do you think it might have been a different outcome for Spain had he taken some of these players with him?
Of course, at the end, you have a plan B. I think that he had a plan B, but it wasn't no much different from the plan A. Starting with Asensio, with Ansu Fati, or starting with Olmo in the left side, and starting with Sarabia, or starting with Asensio in the right side, at the end, they are very similar. So you don't have a different maker, and that's why Nico Williams, that starting in that right side, start making more minutes, because he's the different maker. He's the player who can beat players on 1v1 on speed, and try to make crosses. But then you need to have a player in the box who can grab those balls. And we've seen during the game when Nico Williams was inside, he made a couple of crosses. And when Morata tried to arrive in the near post, there was no one else. There was no player from the left side arriving in the second line, or someone from outside of the box getting into the box. There was only one player to try to arrive, because you have Pedri, Gavi, that they are no players who can arrive to go in the head. So you need to have these kind of different makers, players who can play in a different way. Even you had Nicky Jamon, you have Eric Garcia, you have Pau Torres, who can play in the center and then use Rodri as a holding midfielder, a player who can arrive in the second line because he's good in the air, because he's physically present, can arrive. He's got a fantastic shot from out of the box. So if he arrives to those spots, like you guys are mentioning, from 25, you can try. Because even as a centre back, he tried one time in the first half. So at the end, you have this plan B that you can adapt depending on what you need during the game. I think that it was needed something different, and today we've been proven with one plan A is not enough.
And
to the point that Luis was making about no second option in the box. There was one really good example of that, as Morata actually makes a good run in behind, and he gets towards the end line. He's in a very tight angle. And as he's about to either take the shot or cross the ball, everybody else is hanging out top of the 18-yard box, including, and this is when you have had possession of the ball in the attacking half for nearly a minute, 2 minutes, whatever it may have been. That guys like Dani Olmo are not crashing the box. That guys from the second line are not crashing the box. So if Morata takes himself out of the middle to make a diagonal run, and now he's looking for service, there was no service to be had. That is what Spain became, a team that either had one option or no option at all.
There was one interesting thing I heard during the first half on the network in the US that we were watching on. When they went down to their touchline reporter, he said that Luis Enrique was telling Ferran Torres that had been a great ball had come in from Dani Olmo from the left side, and it fizzed across the face of the goal. And Luis Enrique was telling Ferran Torres that he wanted him to get into the back post. And I'm sitting going, he's having to tell him that. An international footballer playing in the last 16 of a World Cup, and he's having to tell him he wants him to get in the back post. I mean, that's just not. That's natural, or it should be. I mean, come on.
And then in the end, it did all come down to penalties. And Shaka, they were not good penalties from Luis Enrique's side. What was the reaction in the stadium?
Listen, I don't know if it could come across in the broadcast, but it was very loud in Education City. It was very partisan, very pro-Moroccan, as you could expect. And I think that was telling. When the toss was made and the decision was made to take the penalties in front of the Spanish crowd, you could hear a cheer go up, because it almost felt as though that was Spain's only option should they hold their nerve. But even so, the crowd just ramped up the noise. It was incredibly telling. And yes, the penalties were poor, but I don't think that's giving Bono enough credit. I would say that. In particular, I thought the penalty save from Busquets was one that, from a goalkeeper perspective, I enjoyed a lot. And it felt like Morocco were playing for those penalties for quite some time in their defense, and then they made the advantages that playing here in Qatar offered them. They just made them count, and they were by far the team and group of individuals that held their nerve best, no better punctuated than by Hakimi.
Jules, there's a few names you could pick from here, but who stood out to you the most from Morocco's team today?
Well, I think that the whole collective to start with, because they really fought for each other, like they said to us after the game. I think Sofiane Amrabat in midfield, who had been struggling with back pains. He stayed up until 3 a.m. last night with a physio. He played with an injection. To be able to play like this for 120 minutes, and he was amazing. He was literally everywhere. To see Azzedine Ounahi, for example, the young midfielder from Angers who was born in France, for Luis Enrique after the game to say, someone really impressed me. That number 8, what was his name? He didn't even know his name. So we said, oh, Ounahi, he went, oh my word, where is he coming from? So to see those guys, and Saïs at the back with Aguerd, Hakimi, Mazraoui, it's a bit different, by the way. Well done, Hakimi, for the Jalen Wardle celebration, of course, the Penguin. That's how cold that Panenka was, by the way, in a very hot stadium. But those guys were outstanding. And then you've got Ziyech, of course, who is the icing on the cake, because he's by far the most talented player. Someone who was not with the national team for the last 2 years, who came back because of the new head coach, Walid Regragui, who brought him back. But if you just pick one, I think he has to be the one that Luis Enrique himself picked in that Moroccan team, the young Ounahi, who was really outstanding in that midfield.
Well, that's arrogance for you, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
That's arrogance for you.
Should you know every player that's coming on?
It's his job, whether he does it or whether he's got some minion doing it for him, that he should know every player in that squad, every single one of them, strengths and weaknesses. And he's asking journalists about a player after the game. I'm sorry, that tells you that he just thought that it was about his side. It's about Spain, it's not about Morocco. I tell you what, you got to look at Saïs as well. Thank God he didn't have to take a penalty. Because he was on one leg, struggling away at the end. Did you see him running back when he had the bandage around his leg? I'm like, if he's got to go one-on-one, there was so many, I agree with Jules, Amrabat in the midfield, but as a collective unit, Hakimi, I want to see, I'm putting money down on a sprint, him and Mbappe, over a football field. It's 50-50, isn't it?
It would be great to see. Hey, listen, when it comes to those penalties, though, this is how bad Spain's World Cup penalty record is. It's as bad as England's. That's how bad it is right now, literally. Anyway, before the game, Luis Enrique was asked about penalties, and he says, I imagine that they have done their homework. Over a year ago, in one of the Spain camps, I told them they had to get here with at least 1,000 penalties taken. If you wait until getting here to practice penalties, it won't be enough.
Well, if you wait to get to there and to ask who the number 8 was, that's a bit late as well.
That's probably not enough either.
It didn't look like they'd practiced 1,000 penalties each, Luis, today.
Yeah, well, probably they practice and probably they score so many of them, but it's totally different when you are in training and you have in front of you a friendly goalkeeper, your mates around, and you're joking around and you've been training and you practice and you shoot maybe 15. We all done that, but it's a totally different situation. When you arrive there, the whole crowd, you know the responsibility that it is to shoot that penalty, to score that penalty, and the feelings are right there. It's not the same. I can tell you that feeling you cannot see it or feel it anywhere else. And probably they're going to remember this penalty shootout forever because it's something that sticks with you. And that's the way it is. So many people, probably no one that has been in front of a goalkeeper in a situation like that one is going to understand it. But definitely you cannot practice that kind of penalties.
I understand that, Craig. I want to speak to somebody taking penalties here. I understand that you can't practice for that pressure, especially a stadium like that with that noise around them. And I don't mean to bring up England here, but I have to, because Gareth Southgate knew in 2018 it was a big psychological problem for England, and he still looked at how to deal with the mental side of it, and it did pay off for them. Could they have done anything to get some psychological training to try and ensure this wouldn't? For England, no, but they won their first penalty shootout in forever, and he'd taken in 2018.
Did they?
Yes. Because he'd looked at all different things, even the little things like the walk-up to taking the penalty, just mentality-wise, just something that could have helped players. Because, yes, you can't practice for that pressure, but surely there's something you can do to try and help it.
I'm just going to sit here and let you keep talking. And I'll make a noise when I'm convinced. I don't know what the noise is, but I'll make a noise.
So there's absolutely nothing you can do to prepare.
I'd be like that, leave me alone. You can work in technique and all this stuff all you like. You can bring in sports psychologists. I've seen them at clubs. I've had them at clubs. I mean, honestly, half the time it's money for old rope. And you can practice your technique, pinging the ball into the corner and all that sort of stuff, and whipping it across and waiting to the last minute. And then you get to that stage and the knees start buckling a little bit and you start thinking about the weight of the world and your shoulders. And I don't know. Maybe there is a psychological thing to it. I don't know. It's an individual thing. I just think sometimes we read too much into it. I mean, he brought the two guys on, Soler and Sarabia, for the penalties, I believe. They were terrible. Busquets is a great technician. Contrary to what Xhaka said, wasn't a very good penalty. I don't know. I just don't know if there's... Look at Roberto Baggio, was it 94 World Cup here?
Yeah.
Over the bar. It can just happen.
What I would say is, to your point, if you have any doubt in this sort of environment, this is not the moment to do anything fancy, anything tricky. At some point, you go back to, you just mentioned technique, and you lean on that technique, something that you have done time and time again. You run up to this ball, you pick a corner, and you hit it as hard as you can. If the goalkeeper makes a big save, full stretch, and somehow is able to get there and makes a save, hey, look, credit to you. But if you go there with a slow run-up and you think that you're going to be able to hold your nerve in this particular moment with all these emotions, with this suffocating pressure and this tension, and then you're going to wait for the goalkeeper to make a move, and now you're going to try to manage somehow to just caress the ball into the back of the net, you have to be a big timer for that. You have to be at the very elite level. And I just don't think that this guy's, their approach was correct. And think about Sarabia for a second. He gets brought in to essentially take a penalty. Last second of the game, he hits the post. Goes and takes a penalty, hits the post again. Now that's tough. That is tough because the responsibility was given to you thinking that you were going to be the first guy and you were going to get us going. If you're Spain, you were going to get us going in the right direction. You hit it off the post, and now the whole momentum that you think you were going to build up, now that momentum is gone and pressure is back on Spain.
So what was the penalty? Remind me, the 2018 Colombia.
Yes.
Right. So what happened in the 3 years after that?
Am I saying it worked? Am I saying that's why it was? Maybe not. I'm just wondering if there are measures you can take, you know, on the mental side of things.
Look, the modern game, I understand. There's an entourage behind the scenes. We have throw-in coaches now at some clubs, whatever. We have set-piece coaches, which I believe most have. I heard the US had a set-piece coach. They never look like scoring a goal from a set-piece. I don't know. Maybe we have or we will have penalty kick coaches. I mean, I don't know. The world's going bonkers. At the end of the day, it is a huge test of nerve. Mm-hmm. Technique, but nerve. And you can't instill that into somebody. You might have been having a terrible game. You're low in confidence. You're knackered. You might be having a great game. You're full of confidence. You're not getting any injuries. You're not cramping up. You can't quantify it.
Jules?
Just one last thing on it, because it's something that I have to say I've never seen before. I don't know from where Xhaka was sat, but from where we were sat, we also had the screen with the cameras from the pitch. And it looked like Luis Enrique was not taking part at all in picking the 5 players for Spain that play. After the game, he said that he only picked 3 out of the 5. Well, you're the head coach and you pick 3 players out of 5, and then you let Busquets and the players on their own. I mean, Busquets was writing on the piece of paper to give to the referee what order and the name of his teammates that were going to take the penalties. I was like, I've never seen a coach not picking the 5, or at least not being part of the process of picking 5 players and maybe even 6, 7, and 8. But for him to go and just pick 3 and then just wander off pretty much and go and sit on the bench, by the way, by himself, when the rest of the staff and all the Serbs were all together, apart from him, when on the other side, all the Moroccans, including Walid Regragui, the head coach, were together, I thought from a Luis Enrique point of view, that was very, very poor again.
Luis?
What can I say? I mean, we have to wait and see how Jules will do it. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, everyone has got a way of doing the thing. Everyone is thinking. Now everything looks like Luis Enrique has got all the, because he picked the 11, he picked. Yeah, but he wasn't there when Sarabia put the ball with the right inside and didn't put it in. I mean, there are things that they are out of control of the manager. And they are things that when he decided to pick the 3 of them is because they were the most experienced, the best players on the field, and they will give the confidence to the rest of them. And he picked that one, and the first one, it was probably the best one taken over there, hard and dry, and he went out. You cannot control that. You are out. I mean, we will not be talking about. We will say, oh, Luis Enrique was so calm and confident about these players sitting down on the bench. But because they lost, now we're focusing on Luis Enrique to mention about this thing and this, that. He decided to put 2 on the players because that's the way they do it sometimes, the players inside into the game. They are players who are more confident. They say, no, I'll take it. Let me take it. And maybe Luis Enrique has been the one to say, no, it's going to be Busquets and it's going to be Sarabia. But the players say, no, I'm going to take it. And they take it because that's the confidence. That's what he decided to put these 3 players, and then another 2 to put it into the decided of the players, because maybe 2 of the players into the team, they will say, I'm confident, give me the ball. Because let's not forget, there was Ansu Fati, Balde, Pedri. They were players 18 years old. You want to put those players through this situation. I think that he changes Sarabia for Nico Williams because he didn't want to put him through to take the penalty at that age because he hasn't played many games for the national team. So at the end, we cannot be pointing to this one is not good, this one is not good. It's a decision that you have to make in that situation.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.